Today's interview is with another well-known veteran in the sustainability movement here in Costa Rica. Peter Kring is a nurseryman and farmer who has over 30 years' experience in tropical agriculture. He's introduced many valuable species into cultivation in Costa Rica and maintains a collection of over 200 species of fruit trees. His farm Finca la Isla in Puerto Viejo is a successful family farm, and it includes a very impressive botanical garden and nursery. Peter is an advocate of farmers markets and is the president of the committee that manages the market in Puerto Viejo. Finca la Isla offers a plethora of workshops in horticulture, medicinal plants, chocolate making, fermentation, and farm-to-table practices. In today's episode, Peter shares with us his insights into sustainability through producing goods to sell at the farmer's market. He also touches on organic certification, what it takes, and whether it's worth it. Beyond that, Peter shares with us his preferred soil amendments and walks us through some of his fruit forest maintenance. For all that and more, get yourself a pen and a paper in preparation for your peek into the world of Peter Kring.
Peter, I want to ask you a question. This is something I ask all of my guests, and it really takes a unique person to want to come to a foreign country and buy a piece of land and plant it up as abundantly as you have. And you did this 30 years ago when the whole culture of foreigners being here growing ecological projects was really just starting, and you even described some of these trees that you were the first to bring in the country. So what is it that drew you to buy land and start doing an ecological project like that here?
Hi. It seemed like an easy thing, a logical thing to do, maybe through a process of elimination. But some people that I was taking a lot of risks, and for me it just seemed like the natural thing to do. That everything was perfect. And at the time that we did it, some things were a lot harder to do, but also it was easier to buy land then than it is now. And so we got that out of the way pretty straightforward. But actually, before we bought land, we've accomplished a lot here, but it's taken a long time. And we came to Costa Rica, and we were actually deciding between Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, and Ecuador. And when we came to Costa Rica, we rented a house outside of San Jose for about 8 or 9 months, and traveled around the country, bought a car, traveled around the country, looked at places and talked to people. And then we decided on to give Puerto Viejo a try on the Caribbean coast, southern Caribbean coast. And we came down here and we rented a house. And 4 months later, we bought our first piece of land. And it was a piece of 5.5 hectares. And the idea was to work about 5 hectares of land in a responsible and sustainable way. And, things like permaculture and agroforestry were just getting going. But it was a wonderful time. And there were other people that were working around as we were. Not everyone has stayed with these projects. But over the period of years, we bought 2 more pieces of land, and so we have about 17 hectares, about 45 acres of land. More than half of it is forest, and probably always will be. And we've opened up the land, as you can see. We converted from one tree crop, cacao, to a plethora of other tree crops. And so we have open areas that might be 1 acre, they might be 3 acres, but they're all surrounded by corridors of rainforest. The corridors of rainforest are for the animals. They're also to support the soil. So we figure that by having forest nearby, there's a downside to that. Trees come crashing out of the forest onto the area that you're working and so on. But it really helps support the land and contributes to the health of the soil.
Great. Yeah, no, having the forest around is definitely a blessing and a curse. The jungle grows so fast. and you're just always contending with it. You want to plant it up, but then you got to keep it back. And you want to plant it up and you got to keep it back. So definitely in a super humid region like this, I can imagine that's even more escalated. Yeah.
You learn a lot from the forest. And, I was at a friend's place who doesn't live here. He has a project. There's a lot of people that come down here and buy a piece of land, and they have a dream of doing something like what we're doing, but they're not going to do it until they retire, or something good happens to them and they're able to do it. And his workers. So we're planting over there, and his workers say, no, you got to use these chemical fertilizers. And I said, we don't use that stuff. And he says, well, nothing's going to grow because the soil here is not that good, and nothing will grow without it. And his place is like mine in that there's a lot of forest around. I pointed at the forest and said, well, what about that stuff? How does that stuff grow? Oh, yeah, well, that's natural. That grows there natural. I said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. Go walk in the forest there and see what's on the ground. It's not scraped clean like you have around these trees. It's got all these leaves and everything, and leaf litter, and there's a cycle, and the trees can live fine like that. And so that's what we're going to do. Our farm is certified organic, and we have terrific fruit production, and we don't use any chemicals. We never have used.
How soon, or how long you been here for? I don't know, over 30 years, I think now. And how long in that journey did you choose to get certified organic? What brought that along?
So that's an interesting thing, because we were there's two cooperatives in this area that you can be certified through those cooperatives, and this is very inexpensive, and that certification is appropriate for selling on the local market in Costa Rica. In general, you're going to have issues trying to export with that certification, but it's not that the quality of the certification isn't good. There's a whole system where people need to get paid, and so that's what it comes down to. But so I was first certified by a cooperative in in the Sixola Valley called Apta, who specializes in cacao, but they also have other products. And I was selling some stuff to them, but hardly anything. And I worked with them. They're difficult to work with. They eventually asked me about letting the certification go, since I wasn't really doing much with them. Okay. Now, I am certified again. The organic certification, it's not really something that I need to have, because my place is well known, my reputation is good, and I sell my product here at the farm, and I sell it at the farmer's market. And so people at the farmer's market know that some of them have come here to look at this place. Others have heard that it's good, and so nobody questions whether it's organic or not. But as a promotion for the farmer's market, our farmer's market is not specifically organic. It's a mixed farmer's market. And so we wanted to have a section of the farmer's market that's exclusively organic. And we needed to help people get organic certification. So around 8 of us got together and petitioned a different cooperative that's specializes in organic bananas to help us with that. And so that's called a COPRO, and it's based in Home Creek, and that is where we get our organic certification now. And so there's a section of the farmers market that's people put out their certificate there, and it's recognized as being organic. And people that don't have that certification are not allowed to say that their products are organic, which has been a problem in the past.
Okay. Yeah, that's a method I've heard a number of people using in our region as well, and one that I'd like to look further into myself, this idea of joining an organic cooperative, because it seems like it's maybe cheaper and faster to have a cooperative that's already certified, and then you do whatever you need to do to associate with them, yeah, according to their guidelines?
It's way cheaper. It's negligible what you pay. For your own private organic certification, the cost becomes a factor. But with they have a special deal for these cooperatives, and I think the cooperative pays the same as one person would pay.
Oh, wow.
Sort of thing. And so
Makes a lot of sense,
yeah,
then.
it's very little. We pay something for the cooperative comes and inspects once a year, and the agriculture ministry also comes and inspects once a year. The hardest thing is keeping a book with all. Basically, there's a lot of requirements, and every time you bring something to the farm, every time, when I got a lecture on what we had to do, it said it's like having your own country. So everything that comes in has to come through the customs. Everything that goes out has to go through the customs. And so you're supposed to write this all down, and you have to, and so all your sales, any materials that you bring to the farm, bags of calcium carbonate or some other thing like that. If you make biochar, as we do, you're supposed to report that. That's all supposed to be in this book, and the sales of all the products that you sold for that month. And so they go over that book on the inspection. Otherwise, they look around, and a place like this looks real good to them. They're not very, very concerned. That there's one or two places in our group where the people are next to a farm that's not organic, and so there's an issue, and they need to have a good barrier and everything. But this is all real good here.
Wow, great. Yeah. I'll be looking more into some associations in our region. You talked about the forest and talking to your neighbors about this idea of using the forest as a teacher, yeah, for growing, and I know for producing food for a market, or all of these great trees and bromeliads and things that you have that you're putting out, you have a lot of it set in this kind of natural setting. It's not really a sterile nursery. It's not, and we saw some of the trees that you're actually just growing in the ground out in the field for sale later. And this idea in permaculture comes up a lot about imitating nature, about basically observing how the natural processes work and then making systems that accelerate that, yeah, or accelerate a value of that. And what are you doing here that kind of brings that natural element and that those teachings of nature into what you're building here?
So, as I said, in the forest floor is covered with leaf litter, which is all manner of leaves and sticks and anything that happens to be there, and that can be pretty deep. Actually, it can easily be a foot deep, and so that's the first lesson right there. And so we keep putting stuff around the trees. We'll bring out. Can be a place in the forest where a tree has fallen over some time ago and is half rotten. We get that often, break that up, and come and put it around underneath the trees. And so we need to make that efficient. We also need to apply microorganisms. There's microorganisms working in the leaf litter, and if we pull that leaf litter aside, we can see the clay underneath. Then, in the process of that, we're gonna see mycorrhizae, mushrooms, and the evidence of bacteria breaking down those leaves, and more often than not, root tips of the trees that are feeding in there, and so that's all going on there. If we just bring those leaves out and toss them on the ground, it might be too dry. Those things might not do well, the microorganisms. So we apply microorganisms, and you need to be applied when it's wet. When it's dry, we let them go. But we also make biochar, and we put biochar as a refuge for the microorganisms. So all this stuff is happening, and as occurs naturally in the forest floor, there's also going to be manures, and so we sometimes apply manure and other organic ingredients of other organic composts and stuff. And so basically it's that, and some trees are known to have certain cycles and need certain things. And with durian, which is becoming a specialty of ours, we're trying to make a natural potassium by burning potassium-rich stuff, such as cacao shells, durian husks, and the stems of banana fruits and stuff like that. We dry that, we burn that. That's an ash that's rich in potassium.
You dry the banana stalk, and burn it.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then we apply that ash under the tree, and that can help induce flowering. So that's something I've done. I've been twice to Malaysia in the last 3 years, and doing farm stays, especially on durian farms. And organic durian farms do that. Non-organic just apply chemical like potassium sulfate, potassium nitrate, that sort of thing, and like people do with mangoes in Costa Rica and in Florida to control flowering. So most things, when I do these farm stays, a lot of them are not organic farms. There are organic farms, but many of them aren't. And some of the best farmers are conventional farmers. But you can learn a lot. And in most cases, there's an organic substitute for the conventional practice. In some cases, it's more expensive, it's more trouble, but that's what we do.
Yes, I support that. Yeah, it's worth it. And I love the visual and just the practice of, like we're saying, accelerating the natural processes, taking what we find in the forest and bringing it to the base of our trees. It's great. So, in all this attention that you're giving to the trees, it's not just for personal sustenance. Again, you've got a model here that's successful, that's keeping you going and growing, which is this cottage industry of taking fruits to the market and trees from your nursery. In all of this, keep track of all of the tasks required to get the type of production that you rely on.
It's actually, I think that's easier with trees than with row cropping and some other types of farming. But farm is a business, and so there need to be some priorities there. And we have a lot of things that we just like, and we like to see them around, whatever. But basically, we prioritize the farm as a business, and it's the only way that we can do it. And I think that also it's important as an example to local farmers that it is possible to have an organic, sustainable farm that is at the same time a successful business. A lot of people, foreigners, wealthy Costa Ricans will just have a hobby farm, and they employ workers, and the workers see what they're doing, and this is cool and everything. But these people have a lot of money. They don't need to sell anything. This isn't anything that I could do. This doesn't make any sense for me. So when we are doing some things that might not be so easy to understand, or that somebody wouldn't do it right off, but they do see that we are producing stuff for sale. We're making money with the farm, and so that can be convincing then. And we're not. Some of these people, they go to work for somebody, they've got to spray herbicide, they've got to do a bunch of nasty stuff. We don't do anything like that here, and the farm makes money. So,
you said you do a bit of outreach, helping local farmers transition and take on new practices. Do you have a formal type of, guide for doing that?
No, because every case is different. And so people come and I talk to them, and sometimes I'll go to their farm and see what they're doing. But they're generally clients of the nursery. And so I help them and give them special deals and try and make sure that it's going to go good for them. But I usually find them through as they come here looking for material to plant. So they can see that I'm selling these mangosteens and all these other fruits. There's a lot of fruits that I've introduced here, and sometimes I'll have 10 different kinds of fruits. Every one of them a rare fruit at the farmer's market. And so Costa Ricans are really good fruit buyers. They like these fresh fruits. They're open to trying the new fruits. And so I've been very fortunate there. With the pandemic and there being zero international tourists through this whole last fruit season, a lot of businesses just shut. But we sold more fruit than we'd ever sold, and because just Costa Ricans and the people the foreigners who live here, but more Costa Ricans, they buy. They're excellent fruit buyers. I can spend 5 minutes or more sampling fruit, 10 minutes to a foreign tourist, and what they buy is next to nothing. So we sell chocolate, and we have cacao. We make chocolates. Another thing we do that's turned out really well. The foreign tourist buys chocolate. The Tico buys it too. So we're selling chocolate all along, but it's like low season right now because there aren't any of the foreign tourists for the botanical garden, for buying chocolate, but for buying plants and for selling plants and selling fruit. It's been very good. I have never. A lot of people just let their employees go. I've kept everybody, and we're working through it, and so it's good.
That's great. So if somebody wanted to replicate that, like me, for instance, I have hundreds of fruit trees around my farm, and to be honest, we don't have an active fertilizing or amending cycles for things, and we get harvest, and it's inconsistent, and definitely nothing I would really rely on yet for sustaining us. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's got some things planted, they're excited about putting more in the ground, but they've got to create these systems? Every tree needs something different. They need different cycles and foods. And so what kind of approach would you suggest for someone to set themselves up for success?
I know that problem well. I have been overconfident in the past with something getting going good and then the production falling off. What I tell people, it depends on what it is and the situation on the ground there and everything. But generally, you need to put something back. You're taking the harvest and you're going away with it, and you need to put something back for the tree. And so I think that a combination of minerals, especially calcium carbonate. Another good thing to use is, and it's organic, is rock phosphate. Rock phosphate is more expensive, but you use less of it. This is something that helps rooting a lot.
Here in Costa Rica, some years back, there was a blight on cacao. And I imagine that you, with the variety of cacao you have here, that might safeguard you some toward a future potential. But hypothetically, if cacao got wiped out and your chocolate production suffered, what's another value-added product you might pivot to?
You know, I'm not sure if it would be hard to replace something as good as chocolate. We used to make we take stuff like energy bars and a bunch of stuff like that. Those kind of things come and go, and I don't have something. We're planting some different things that can produce good nuts, and we would see where we would go with that. I have I've been drying rambutan, mamoncino, lately, and that's really good. And somebody told me that they use that as a substitute for a lot of energy bars and things have dates in them. That you can use the dried rambutan as a substitute for dates.
Oh, great.
So I don't know that it would be as good as chocolate. Chocolate is something that people say that everybody likes chocolate. It's not so. I know from sampling chocolate that that's not so. But chocolate, people are attracted to chocolate. Chocolate is a hard thing to replace.
When you talk about drying, I know for me, dried food is a value-added product that I've considered getting into quite a bit. What kind of dehydration systems do you use?
So, we use electric dryers, and when we dry cacao, we dry it in the sun, and then we finish it in the electric dryer.
That makes sense.
You really it needs to be super dry or it can spoil.
We've had that happen. Yeah.
So yeah, you need to know about drying, and actually in buying cacao, it's hard to buy cacao that's really dry. And I tell the people it's got to be dry, and oh yeah, it's dry, but it's not that dry. It doesn't really snap. I like to snap a cacao bean and then take it and move it between my fingers, and it should just be powder that falls down. That's dry. And I don't need a device that tells me how dry it is. That's dry. If it's like, bends before it snaps and it won't do that, then it's not dry enough, and we need to dry it. And you're buying cacao like that, then you've created a job for yourself drying it, plus you're paying for the moisture that you're not going to use. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But an electric dryer has been working fine.
Yeah,
for
so
you.
we use Excalibur dryers, and that works really well for us. I've seen some good, there's a place, Finca Tierra, that has a pretty good drying system. But with cacao, you get away with drying it without, or at least beginning the drying. With the fruits and the black pepper, I wouldn't leave them overnight with stopping the drying. If those start to get mold on them, then you'll lose them.
Right.
Whereas the cacao can get a little bit of mold, and it's expected, and then you get rid of the mold with the winnowing.
So that's what you're suggesting, is that a solar dryer basically stops at night. So that's the kind of problematic feature with that approach.
Another problem with a solar dryer is it's hard to control the temperature. Mm-hmm. So like we're drying at a temperature of about 45 centigrade, maybe 115, something like that. And we don't want to dry hotter than that. And the solar dryer in a hot place the temperature gets real hot, and
you
it
need
can
to
cook
have a
the
fan
stuff.
to
It's going to
that through at a temperature.
Yeah.
Some automation. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like if someone were to really dial in their dried fruit production, that it's a viable value-added product to sustain a farm?
Sure. I mean, it's going to come down to marketing, but yeah. Especially
so in Costa Rica.
Have
you had anyone bring that to the farmer's market that you're working at?
Yeah, we take it, and other people take dried fruit, and it sells.
Yeah.
It just, it depends on how much you need to sell, and the thing is too is it can be sold to stores. There's stores in Puerto Viejo that will buy stuff like that to resell. Chocolate, dried fruit, a lot of things. I mean, we make soap as well.
Oh.
So that's another thing that can be sold at the farmer's market and to a store, or that people come to buy. What in Costa Rica, at the farmer's market, you get away with some stuff that to sell to a store. Basically, the stores, most stores don't care that much here, but they can. The Ministerio de Salud can come to a store, and if the product doesn't have a label, a number of approval from the health department, then they can just take it. And obviously the store takes that loss, and they're not going to buy any more. The farmer's market, that doesn't happen. You're allowed to sell stuff that you make on your own with just having, there's another kind of permit that we have, it's a carnet for the Carnet de Manipulación de Alimentos. It's a food preparation card that you have to take a course to get. That is a lot easier than getting the approval on a product for sale. And they do come and will check for that. You need to be a Costa Rican resident or a formal resident to get that carnet.
Oh, okay. Good to know. So besides the work that you're doing with the farmer's market and selling trees from your nursery, do you have any cottage industry here on the farm where you bring people in for, say, fruit tours or workshops or anything like that?
We do that.
Yeah.
We have the botanical garden. Groups come to the botanical garden. Individuals come. And before the pandemic, that had regular open hours and a guide that was there to meet people at the reception.
Is that on the site here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw the little yellow signs with the names and stuff. So that's what that's all for. People walk around with a map.
Yeah.
And a guidebook, or they can have a guided tour. So that's my son's business. I founded that, but I turned it over to him, and he runs that.
Fruit tourism.
It's good for birds and frogs and stuff like that too, since it goes through the pathways in the forest. So that's a good business. I basically put him through university with that, and then I was burned out on it. I said, you want to come back and live in Puerto Viejo, you can have this business. I mean, he had helped with it and stuff on vacation and things, and so he took it over. Workshops, we do. I have one coming up on the 30th of November, a Spanish language one on food forest. And I do workshops on propagation, where we learn, from planting seeds and rooting cuttings to doing air layers and grafting.
Great. Well, it sounds like any listeners that make their way to Puerto Viejo should certainly be checking you out and seeing what you've got going on here. My mind's been blown all day long. Before we end here, I just wanted to ask, do you have any last words of advice for landowners that are looking at their project like, okay, I did it, I got land, I'm ready to go, how am I going to make this work? How would you advise them to start?
I don't have specific advice about that. I mean, people have to, they have to, I think that they need to figure out what they want to do and then do what it takes to make that work. And it really depends on them and the piece of land and everything. What their goals are.
Fair enough.
That's all I can say.
All right. No, that's great. And there are a number of places where people can find you online. You want to share some of those addresses, or?
People can find me on and send an email, crgarden@mac.com, and also WhatsApp is the Costa Rican country code +506 8829 4929. Also on Facebook, my name, Peter Kring, Kring, and there's also a Facebook page for Finca la Isla Botanical Garden. Google Maps, Finca la Isla, FINCA LA ISLA, it will come up in searches for Google Maps and on Google.
Okay, great. So if there's any fruit hunters out here, now you know where to find them. Thanks so much for your time. It's just been an enlightening day, and I wish you all of the best in what you're doing here and whatever else might come through it.
All right. Well, it was good to meet you, and I hope we see you back here soon again. Thank you very much.
Likely. I'm going to take those trees that I got from you and give them some nice homes. Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thank you.